Hello, welcome everybody back to WCS Season 3 Challenger EU Edition. I'm in control, joined by Zombie Grub. Zombie, are you excited for this next one? You have to say yes.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
What happens if I say no?
Then I do that like, oh, and like, why? And you're like, I'm just kidding. I'm like, oh, I don't know. That's what would happen, I guess. But
next time I'll say no, and I want to see the exact reaction.
it does too. I'm actually only a good host or commentator so long as things are going like this. But the second someone's like, hey, I don't like burritos, I'll be like, why are they saying that to me? I'm not in the lobby. We're logged out of the BattleNet, so I'm not quite sure where we go from here. But in the intro of this, we're going to talk about, here's the group. So Cyril will take on you, Thermal. It's the one you're about to watch. Or no, that's not actually. You're going to take on we're going to see Denver versus Harstem in the loser match first, right?
Right, yes.
There we go. We got it correct there. Which will be fun. Denver showed some really sick, solid play.
Yes, he did.
The guy's yelling at me under the keyboard. So this is that really weird moment.
Lobby difficulties.
Where he's like, look under your keyboard, and he just keeps saying in my ear, and I'm like, there's actually nothing
Is it like on the bottom?
under the keyboard.
No, there's nothing there, no.
Cool.
Confirmed.
And then I'll just host and log into BattleNet, I guess, right now. And is there anything else I can do for you guys while I'm here? Do you want some ladder points? Want some ladder? Can you give some ladder points?
It's perfect.
We'll just go with your computer. I actually can't do this.
I feel like I might be okay just doing with only my computer, so.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Thanks. Thank you. So yeah, Denver versus Harstem. So Harstem just did not have the greatest of PVTs, but
no, that was rough. That was pretty one-sided, and that's something that can happen. I do think Thermal is in that ballpark of some of the best European Terrans, and when he's playing his best, we kind of joked about this a little bit earlier. And not even joke, really. It is real. Thermal is one of the few players in Europe that could take maps, certainly, but maybe take on a Cyril. It's kind of weird to say, but it is true. Yeah,
when he's like in his like perfect form, like Thermal at the top of his ability, then yes, that is absolutely true. And he certainly looked like he was tip-top form. I mean, his build was executed so well that he won a fight and Harstem went down. So that looks like a very good Thermal to me. But Harstem, I mean, not to say that his PVT is bad or his weakness or anything like that, because I'm not sure if it is, but I feel like when Harstem does really well, it starts with a PVZ. So.
Well, also Widow Mines happen, and that's the kind of funny thing, right? In a best of three, like in both games, he was doing pretty okay, and then game 2 was obviously the worst one, but the one Widow Mine hitting like 9 probes or whatever it was. But even in the first one, they didn't do a lot of damage per se, but they slowed down the mining. They did get a couple of probes, which again, you look at that and you go, but yeah, but it's 3 Widow Mines. But Terran back at home was going up 20, 30 army supply, shows up one bad fight, and that little bit of economic damage you took, and the game's over. Yeah. The nice thing about this kind of format, though, is that you can have a couple of bad games like that, and you still have another life to give. So Harstem against Denver, you have to favor Harstem, and he needs to bounce back here and play really well. Otherwise, he's at best in the Montreal Open bracket, unfortunately, which is always going to be stacked full of great players.
Yeah, that would be tough. That would be very tough. But Denver, he showed a very good performance against Cyril at ZvZ. I think that he also, when I've seen him really impress, it was versus Protoss. Okay. So I feel like it's a true test. Obviously, it's a test to see who even stays alive in the actual group, but it's a test for... just, this is how they're going to get their confidence back and continue on into that. Whoever gets the decider match, which we're going to guess is Thermal, but he's the only guy apparently that can take on Cyril.
I mean, if Thermal did beat Cyril, that would be really disappointing for the other two guys who are totally counting on probably facing Thermal in that decider match. But if you get Cyril there, that's rough. Anyways, that's further down the road. Here is these two guys. Denver played a great series. He did lose 0-2 to Cyril, which I know sounds weird, but both the games were pretty darn good. He pushed him to the limit, was ahead at various different times, was not able to seal the deal. Harstem looking for that redemption, as Zombie Grub was kind of talking about. A couple of bad games from him, but certainly he can show more. And that is what we're hoping for here as we get into the map. In the top right-hand side, the red Protoss from the Netherlands, it's Harstem.
And in the bottom left, as the blue Zerg, he is Denver. He's French, right?
Yes, he is. I don't know the origin of his I mean, Denver just sounds kind of cool, but it's definitely...
Yeah.
I believe it's just a city in Colorado. Like, I don't think there's... there's a lot of cities in Europe that are named after over here.
They are named after the states and cities in America.
No.
That's true.
America's named after them.
No, I don't think that's true.
Oh, okay, you're right. You're fair.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you. No, actually, there's a television show, Denver the Last Dinosaur.
You think?
Well, no.
Oh, you know?
I know because people have told me this. I've never seen it.
That's
but
it?
I think Denver also has seen it. He will sing the
Wow.
the song to it if you prompt him, I think. So.
Can't tell if you're yanking my leg, but I like this world where he just really likes a cartoon called Denver the Last Dinosaur.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think he's ever been to Denver, Colorado.
No. The French don't go there.
No.
Why would they?
That's actually a fair question. I mean, I guess there's like, the French kind of like skiing, right? I mean, they're like, that's kind of a thing
Do
that
the
they
French
do.
like anything?
Bread, pastries, cheese.
Mimes, I suppose.
Yes.
A good mime will go a long way in France.
Actually, I don't think I saw a single mime in France.
Well, a good mime, I said, right? It's gotta be. You got to go to the special place to find the good mimes.
Ooh. Okay, I didn't go to any special places in France. Maybe next time. Maybe next
Careful,
time.
yeah, be careful of that one. Don't say In Control said ask for the
mean,
special place in France.
There's a place called the Bunker that I really want to check out in France, but maybe next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, way to salvage that. See what I did?
Oh.
Did you see that? That's a Rubby joke. Yeah, I gotta save my dad jokes for when Rubby's here. Now Denver is gonna go for the pretty standard opening, just speed. Third hatch is not in existence just yet.
And ditto for Harstem, right? Pretty normal stuff.
Yeah.
Got an Adept being chronoed out, Stargate in the back, and the third base is one to be taken. There we go. So all standard here. Now Denver showed us a lot of like cool things in his ZvZ, and that's what I enjoyed the most. If he had played a straight up Roach versus Roach game versus Cyril and done well, that's cool too. All right, props for that. Cyril's very good, but he actually tried to mix things up. He tried to be a little bit different, and I'm really hoping to see some non-standard, compositions, I suppose, some more of the fun compositions, such as more Ling emphasis in this matchup, because in my opinion, it's the most fun way to do things, but it's also a good way to trip up your opponent. Like one Ling run by ruins Protoss's day.
And we saw a lot of that too in his ZvZ, which I know is a different matchup, of course, but if Zerg seems like they're pretty fixated on counterattack play and being really informed through being active with the units like Lings, you can actually kind of do that across the board. And in fact, that's, I would argue, one of the things that makes Cyril so good is that he does commit to that in all the matchups. Now the Adept is going to play it safe. Not going for any drone kills just yet. Just gonna get some information. And now we do see the Oracle as the second unit off that Stargate, which is fairly normal. It's the question, is it gonna be a second Stargate or a Robo here? And does he actually let the Oracle finish? It looks like he will. There is a gateway, not even a Robo, just more gateways. Okay.
Gonna take out another Overlord. That with speed would have been able to get a follow-up scout, but no one's going to see anything here. I love Denver's positioning of his Lings along every pathway that the Oracle or later on maybe a Warp Prism would throw pass by. Sport Crawlers were already on the way. I mean, some Zerg players kind of skip this third one because there's no drones there after all, but he's just going to go ahead and plant that down. And yeah, I mean, I think the next thing we got to worry about is like the third base of Harstem. Does Denver try and do anything about it? It's not going to be a heavy emphasis on Lings, as we do see a Roach Warren thrown down as soon as I was about to get excited. But Roaches are exciting too. You know who proved that Roaches are exciting?
Stefano.
I mean, he proved that they were good.
Who are you thinking?
Cyril.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Cyril will
exciting.
use them as if they're like stimmed bio. I think it's really cool.
That's good. Good comparison.
Yeah.
Not seeing the third just yet from Harstem, and actually kind of talked to him at Home Story Cup. He was saying that one of the things that he does is he's not very confident in the Archon drop, so he likes to go for the what was in the meta much more commonly in the past was the really fast third. So there it is. It's still pretty fast. It's a 5-minute third Nexus, but he was talking like 3 minutes or 3:30, like very, very quick. In this case, he's going to delay a little bit. I'm not entirely sure if that's because he knows Denver is maybe a unit-heavy type of Zerg. Does lose an Oracle there.
Oopsie.
That's why you got 2 of them, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, scouting's still fine. The Adepts were thinking about doing something, but there was a large squadron of Lings. So they're going to wrap around, go unnoticed, maybe try and break into the natural, which the Adept should always be there, so that shouldn't be happening. +1 charge. And, yeah, we do have that Roach speed now. And an Evolution Chamber. So, pretty standard, pretty safe, too, in case Harstem was to do anything else.
Yeah.
Like an Archon drop, but No, nothing to worry about.
Both players playing pretty safe, though, to be honest with you. Even the 3 gates before the 3rd and delaying it just a little bit is in case they have a lot of lings. Because if you just have the 1 gateway, yes, the Oracles can hold off the Nexus, but they get you to like engage, back up, come back, and then cancel the 3rd. And then if you're on 1 Stargate and 1 gateway and your 3rd Nexus gets canceled like that, you're pretty dead in the water. So both players playing it pretty safe. And we're not seeing a huge commitment from one way or the other. There is the Hydra Den, and there is the range attack upgrade for our Zerg player. So we might be heading... I mean, usually you see Ling Bangling Hydra, right? But with the Roaches out already, maybe Ravagers as well. Be kind of cool.
Yeah, okay. He's got like a decent number of extra queens that have been trying to follow around these Oracles, by the way, so he's starting to kind of push out that creep. Not in excess, not like a versus Terran, but it's definitely coming. 4th base is scouted by the Oracle. Harstem has a little bit of SimCity here as he gets up to Storm and charge without... I mean, there hasn't even been like an attempt to get us around in some of these units. I guess, actually, I shouldn't say that. Denver did check, but there's no opening. So he's just been running around trying to find something. I mean, I guess he finds an Adept, right? Like, what is the resources lost? Like, barely anything has been done this game. Not that important.
Safe's the name of the game. And just the 1 Robo, by the way, so keep your eye on that, because if you go Storm pretty quick but only have 3 or 4 Immortals in support, a lot of times the Zerg can say, oh, okay, well, Roaches are still up for grabs then here, and I'll go Roach Hydra, which is not the normal composition because double Robo's been so common, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Queens, like you pointed out, waddling over here to connect the 4th base with the plus beyond the 4th base. And one thing you pointed out, but it's going to become a bit of an issue, because the game's been so safe, there's been no push out whatsoever, there's no Stargate presence except for those first 2 Oracles and the Phoenix. The whole half of the map for Denver is covered in creep, and you can see it right here. Harstem, instead of trying to fight against that and start to go uphill, just going to take a 4th base. I like that call, actually.
Yeah, he's getting a War Prism and a 2nd Robo now. Where'd the Phoenix go? Done. Just, it's not doing its job. That's
that Overseer's getting away with robbery, man.
That's not supposed to happen.
No.
But yeah, so there's not much in for the creep spread, but Harstem is a guy that can be comfortable going into the Supreme late game. Yeah. And, I mean, I think right now he's worried about that Lurker Den, which he did scout with Revelation. Feels like it's taken forever to finish, though, to be honest. But, you know, that's not so much a worry when it comes to, like, the direct fight. Like, if you just, you know, come to you through a choke, that's easy enough. But we've seen a lot of drops lately. I don't see any from Denver, so we might just be going to, you know, divvy up maybe 2 ground forces. But right now, without those Lurkers, looking towards the 4th base with mostly the Hydras, at least some of the Hydras on the front line. And he might be able to snipe that. Yeah, in fact, Harstem admits that he was a lot of position there and just cancels it.
Yeah, and it must have been the positioning, too, because he has an army. He's got 5 Templar, but they're not backed up by too much. And Harstem, to again kind of flag the issue you were just talking about, is really willing to take this into the late game, because a lot of players would have dove on that and been like, that's just Hydras. But I guess he was aware of the fact that he could have got flanked, and then if he's pinchered between the Hydras and perhaps some Roaches and Ravagers, then all of a sudden those 5 or 6 Templar don't feel quite as powerful. But we have Denver trying to pry open this can of Protoss here. We did see a warp in there behind this.
Harstem just goes out aggressively since he doesn't have a 4th base to worry about. Denver has half of his units kind of not doing very much, so he grabs a portion of the 50% of army. There's no army back at home as the Zealots just walked from the War Prism over here to the 4th base. The 5th base is also on the way. Maybe they'll grab that at a later time once you realize it's there, but not just going for the drones, maybe even a little bit of scouting, continue to just pull Denver away so that he can't set up this amazing multi-pronged aggression. He's actually going to be able to scout the infestation pit, just barely, but he does. So, I mean, this timing of his own fleet beacon and Stargates is going to work out, you know, quite well. They finally have some drops, which are barely going to be scouted by the Phoenix, but pretty late.
Yep. And maxed out is Denver, so this kind of stuff is good, right? These units otherwise are just sitting there not doing much for you. Gets the Phoenix. Zealots are warped in, but there's some Roaches in here as well, and they tank so well against those Zealots. And with the Hydra DPS behind that,
oh no, it's gonna be denied!
Yeah, and he's late on the upgrades too, by the way. That's just +2 attack. That's not... you know, a lot of Protoss really emphasize that, and at this point in time would have a 3rd attack upgrade, if not more, but he has been stunted. Now, the good news is, it's not like Denver's been double Evo this entire time. His upgrades are not great either. Yeah,
just working on his +2, in fact, so... and we are getting into the later stages of the ZvP. We have a carrier already on the way. Denver is looking towards the Greater Spire eventually. Goes back when the drop, but it's only the Hydra, so that's not such a big deal. More about the attack on the front was a couple of Corrosive Biles actually moving in from 2 different sides, making this a little bit more complicated. There's still quite a few storms left over, though.
Yeah, but the angle's good here. If he can cancel that fourth Nexus again, that would be absolutely massive. He's already, again, hurt. There is the cancel. Getting a flank behind this. The Storm's starting to get kind of thinned out here, and some corrosive bios are connecting. Harstem having a tough time dodging all of this multi-prong attack. Now, this, of course, is not game-ending damage, but I do like from Denver that he's taking these mid-tier units and exchanging them favorably, but also stunting, again, the upgrades and the expansion timing of Harstem, so he's giving himself a chance to put Harstem away kind of technically even. Yeah,
part of the reason he was having some difficulty was he did just use his warp-ins from the warp prism. That was scouted the entire time, by the way. Denver just doesn't like bother to actually do anything about it. The charge lots kind of, I guess they wanted to come in from behind to be like their own, like, you know, helpful force fields, but they actually just get taken out without the help of the Immortals and the Storm. The Storm's gonna have to be used to try and help out in their retreat, but Denver sees an opportunity. He's gonna just actually run through the Storms and try and take out every single Immortal here.
Yep, and he does bite off a little bit more than he can chew, but I feel like he is in a position where he can make those kind of trades, and it's not the biggest... It's a better deal for him, is I guess the point I'm trying to make. Now, Harstem is going to push forward here, and he is remaking that fourth Nexus behind this, so he's not all in per se, but one of the things I want to draw your attention to, look at that production tab. There is no +2 attack even started. Right? Am I blind? There's nothing.
No.
So that's okay-ish for now, but man, as the game gets going, could be a huge problem. I mean, I'd say that, but then look at Denver. He's not upgrading either. What are these guys doing?
They don't care about upgrades.
They don't care about upgrades, I guess.
Yeah, the carriers do want that +2 once he can afford it, and he finally has a fourth base that is allowed to complete. Revelation catches most of the army, and more importantly, the Lurkers, which he has still 6 Immortals, not bad. Storm's on the champ. It's a choke and a ramp. There we go. This is going to be good. Well, whoa, he's not using the Storms. Oh, Templar's dying with Storms in their pockets. That's not ideal. And then I guess the carriers are used to take care of the drop once again.
Otherwise, great fight for Harstem, though. It was actually the first time where Denver engaged, and it looked kind of poor. He has all the Lurkers in that choke, like you said, and they were bunched up, so they got Immortal and Stormed at the same time. Just not very good, but otherwise, I just have to take a moment to basically say that the play from Denver has been phenomenal. He's just, it looks a little bit, if you covered up the name, you wouldn't necessarily say Serral, but you'd kind of start thinking a guy inspired by Serral. Just really good engagements, making the right choice, backing up, creep spread's huge here. I would, if he keeps this level of play, I don't see Harstem getting it back, man. It's gonna be tough.
It is, but he is going through that, like, you know, the steady road to the very late game. Is he taking the best trades? Is he looking amazing in this game? No, not necessarily, but he is building this late game Protoss army and just kind of taking it, you know, inch by inch, I guess, where it's not bad. You know, he got carriers. He is going into that +2 for the carriers. Are important there. Denver's option with the Spire, by the way, is not to go for a greater Spire, but once you realize, like, hey, you have carriers, he's going to try and actually take them down. He's on 82 workers on 5 bases. I would love to see a 6th. I think they need to feel very comfortable, but he can do that. He can actually just, like, dive on top of some of these carriers if he has such a strong economy to back him up.
Really good point. I think the 5 base is the issue here. He definitely has the security, and he knows that with a creep to take a 6th base, but by not taking it, he's not banking as much as he should be off those 80 workers. So it does become that issue of like, okay, you're way ahead, but you have one bad fight, and then all of a sudden, guess what? You lose the game almost immediately after. And there's that 6th base, being denied. But I do like the stack defenses. It's something that I think that Zergs are starting to do more of. You're going to warp in Zealots, that's fine. It's going to cost you more if you're just hitting Spine Crawlers.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of stack defense, Harstem has had a lot of it once he got a base up. Like, the 3rd base is covered by a lot of cannons. And then now he's got shield batteries on his 4th. I also got to talk about just, in general, the map here enveloped by creep. Like, there's so much creep that's never been pushed back. So the 6th, 7th bases should be definitely Denver's for the taking. Actually abducts the mothership and is going to be able to grab that. Not too great of a loss there. Well,
look at him picking apart little things. I mean, it's just the Observer, not the biggest of deals, but the fact that he's got that kind of attention to detail is really great here. Of course, as I say that, ooh, actually, Harstem just killed his own Immortal on accident.
Oops.
Yikes. Yeah. But the Mothership grab was a pretty big deal. And even, you know what's funny about that? I would almost say Harstem doesn't remake it, because the second a Zerg shows that they have Vipers and they will abduct your Mothership, it kind of goes away. There's not a... You can count on feedback as a way to stop it, but it's hard, because anything like that where it's just sitting there, it's just going to lose, and it's a huge expensive unit to lose like that.
It is. little bit slow in the reactions. You know, the Archons could have gotten a couple of shots, maybe one storm, because he has quite a few storms. I mean, he can definitely use them to just kind of like ward away the Corruptors. I'm just gonna try and pull back Denver's army again. He's not gonna bother rebuilding the mothership as a priority, anyways. Warp Prism is, I think the last one was taken out, so there's a new one, but it's gonna maybe go to the main base where there isn't a lot of stack defense. It hasn't really been attacked at all this game, so there's really nothing there.
Quite the tour from the Warp Prism too, right? It just flew. I mean, when there's this kind of creep spread, it feels silly when it's just like, here we go. But there's that Zealot Warp in. And I almost wonder, you kind of mentioned this earlier, but it does feel like Denver's allowing it to exist. He's going to pick it off now. I wonder if it's that advanced or if we're doing that caster thing where we think, you know, everything a good player does is like on purpose, but sometimes we're like, no, I just didn't notice it, man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it seems like he just hasn't cared so much about it. I mean, grand total from the War Prism harassment, maybe like 16 drones? Wait, where's... Oh.
Well, this one Zealot is making up the whole difference.
My bad.
Speaking of not paying attention.
I just thought that was going to die. And now
everyone did, yeah.
Just going to keep on getting drones. And a queen. All right, then.
Just wins the game. Just factor your kill on everything.
I guess the upgrades. He finally got +2, by the way, so... Still doesn't beat that queen.
It's crazy. I mean, yeah. 3 attack shooting for Denver in 1 air, and that's it.
Lots of scouting going down, I believe. That's what the blips are on the mini-map. War Prism's still alive. Well, another War Prism's still alive, I guess. I mean, definitely continue up the aggression, especially since he's still having difficulty getting new expansions. That 4th took forever. The 5th, once again, going to be killed, not canceled. But the Lurkers do die for it, so I don't know if that was actually that great.
21 Hydras being made, by the way. The War Prism does just die.
Yep, just dies. Well, that makes sense. I mean, he was floating along every single base that he could. And again, the creep spread is a bit of a problem. Maybe we see some Dark Templars come into effect later on once he feels more comfortable. As Harstem has never really had a very comfortable bank. It has been just, you know, slowly bleeding off ground units and trying to build them up with the carrier count, which he's gotten to. He's gotten a Void Raise. I mean, this is kind of the perfect Protoss army now. Well, now that he's got on his way to a mothership once again.
Yep, there's the mothership.
Yeah, and Denver has to be careful. He's been, you know, in control of this game for a very long time, for like basically all 18 minutes, but you know, steady wins the race or whatever. Harstem has a very powerful army, even if it's taken him a while to get there.
I don't disagree. And my big concern for Denver here is something you had talked about earlier, but if this 5th base is allowed for the Protoss, and you maintain this perfect army, start shaving off things like the Immortals, and trading them in for even more carriers or something like that, with good control, it becomes a very, very tough fight for Zerg. And you can at times have like 3 or 4 more bases, but if the Protoss just gets rolling and you can't connect any of your Viper spells or anything like that, you can just lose.
Oh gosh.
Well,
yeah, bye-bye.
Speaking of just lose.
Well, I haven't built the mothership.
She just was born, too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that has all to do. I was trying to show that, like, Harstem doesn't have a lot of vision. The Oracle is only getting revelations as the army basically comes on top of his, which is not great.
Yeah.
And he only has 1 revelation on it at any time, so he's missing at least half of the army. And Denver is doing really well with the Corruptors. I'm even scared he's going to come in here and start dealing that caustic spray damage. Well. Yeah, that could kill a Nexus or 2, although a lot of the Nexus of Harstem are just, they're not even useful anymore. They're just for Chrono Boost.
I feel like there's never been more than just the 1 Viper, but it's picking off carriers, it's picking up the mothership. It's just, okay, there's 2 there, but it's just such good control by Denver. And it's kind of funny, too, because there's not much else for him to do here right now, right? He's just sitting on a bunch of workers. His creep spread's been great. He's spreading out the ground army a little bit, and actually almost every time we look at the ground army, that's kind of the not as good moment in his play, but his Corruptor play right now has been surgical.
Yeah, it's been really nice. Harstem is definitely missing out on his own harassment. I mean, the Zealots, even though there was a War Prism, wasn't that impressive. He never went up to the Dark Templars. He is just hoping, I think, that Denver makes a mistake. And certainly, yeah, overestimating his Corruptors would be that mistake. If they try and be in that building again and they all die to Storm, that's Harstem's time to maybe move out and do something. But Denver, he's not losing very much. Resources lost should be... actually, I mean, it's not in his favor, but considering... you can see ZvP happen in this late game. It's not bad.
It's been a passive game. Yeah. Okay. And here we go. Here's the big thrust now. It's going to be a push. They're anchored in between the space. The ground army has dwindled for Harstem. He's been favoring the air army. And the Corruptors, keep in mind, there's a lot of them in low in health. They've been very active, and that's been good. But in a straight-up engagement, I don't think they've got what it takes. Now, the ground army's wiped out. Huge supply advantage for Harstem. What's going to be the remax? 30 more Hydras and 5 Corruptors.
I was a little surprised that Denver even moved in like that. I thought maybe that would be just the Hydras and then they'd move out, but that was the whole middle of his army, and the Corruptors are still going to be very low for any upcoming fight. And Harstem is taking this advantage. Like, he finally takes a really, really good fight. Denver was getting maybe a little impatient, as Zergs do. I mean, Protoss is a tough nut to crack. And now it's time for Harstem, at the very least, to clear up some of this creep spread, which is not often respread.
He actually now feeds it back, but they do get still 1 carrier. The Void Rays become a problem. And Harstem's pushing forward, and like we said, he has that 5th base behind this, so don't forget, add a Warp Prison to this, you can warp in a bunch of ground units. 30 Hydras are fairly soft when they're unsupported by anything else. Harstem up in supply, both in army, well, just army, excuse me. He's starting to land some good storms. Now, there are still lurkers out here, and I think that does complicate things a little bit, right? Like the Zealots that kind of lead off have a tough time, but we're going to dive on this.
Those Corruptors are still very weak, and the Storms, of course, the Archons, everything just takes out the Corruptor count, but does he have enough on the ground? I mean, it was very close, but Denver did not quite have the army to break it. Still has to deal with 4 Void Rays and 1 carrier in the air, and Harstem takes one amazing fight on his side of the map and then just slowly moves across, and Denver cannot take it on.
And this base is critically important. The other bases are basically mined out. So you now have bottom right, and that 6 o'clock base is pretty much the sole income for Denver. He's fighting desperately to hold on to it, but those desperate fights. Now there is a little bit of a defense now on the right side with those lurkers. Going after the carry. The carry's low in health, but he pulls it back just in time, does Harstem. And the Void Ray's doing some work, by the way. It's not very often we get to say that. That's it, GG. And Denver goes down there. That is not what I saw coming. Holy cow.
He was in control of that game for, I think it was 20 minutes. So, oh, it didn't tell us how long the game was. Well, anyways, for like 20 minutes of that game, he was creep spread, he was dealing with harassment, he was pushing, he was poking, he was taking the wins where he could get them, and then he got maybe impatient.
Yeah.
There wasn't really necessarily an opening that I saw. Like, it wasn't like the army was that out of position. It wasn't like he took down that many carriers with the abducts. But he just thought, like, okay, finally I can go for it. And that was the one really bad decision that did snowball. But I feel like that does kind of happen in that scenario where the Zerg player's like, you know, I'm getting these things and I'm actually killing the Protoss. So what do I actually do? Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if it was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to close this out.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not like we're not all sitting at home going like, if you would just do this one thing. I think with us, with all the perfect information that we did have, if he would have stretched the fight, like that big push up in front of the natural, it's not really winning him anything, right? Like he didn't, there's no critical tech, there's no amazing high ground there. He just centralized his whole army and is like, this is where we're going to fight randomly. Got carpet bombed by Storm and lost there, but had he maybe taken the ground army and really committed to the right side, pulled the Protoss army over here and then gone for the fresh new 5th base that Harstem desperately needed, maybe then. But again, I'm not saying that because it's like so glaringly true and that's the only way to win and it's terrible that he didn't do that. It's more just in retrospect, now that we saw that what he did do didn't work, that's something to think about.
Yeah. I mean, maybe there was High Templars that we missed watching the left side of the fight more than right side, that's what he tried to pounce on and saw the opportunity. Like, you get 6 Storms taken out of the equation, and that is a good fight usually.
Yeah.
But I agree with you about just, you know, there wasn't really much to fight over there. So why really push that scenario? And then the left side of Lost and Found is where you can find those huge concaves too.
Yeah.
Whereas that right side, the ramp it's always that ramp. It's always that choke. It's always being kind of pushed into an awkward scenario. So next one's going to be Acid Plants. And I could see this game going very similar to the last one.
Well, hopefully with like a different change though. I like you were saying that Denver was playing brilliantly and doing such a good job, but he just the moments of decisiveness came really strangely and were kind of poorly put, but everything else was really good. Harstem was just on the verge of losing that entire game, and I really thought he was going to, but Denver then like weathered his own Corruptors down to nothing, then committed to a fight, lost kind of all of them. The Zealot harass probably did a little bit too much, like you were pointing out. You're like, he sees this, he knows it's there, he's just not really committing to stopping it. He didn't lose that much to it. It's just those few things where you slam the door on that, don't let it happen, and then commit to a more decisive attack, and I think he wins.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Well, game number 2, in the top left, he is now up 1. It is the Red Protoss, Harstem.
And his opponent, the Frenchman, tragically losing that first game after being in the driver's seat for most of it, it is Denver. And this is the elimination match, guys. This is just a really tough group. Denver's been playing great, but it's weird to say that because he's lost all 3 of the games he's played. It's just that he's, you know, shown really good stuff, but he's playing against some of the best in all of Europe. And Harstem, on the other hand, let's put it this way, too. It's nice to see him bounce back. He got thrashed there a little bit by Uthermal and then was trailing most of the game against Denver, but was able to take the win, and that's what matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, I wonder, I was going to critique on it, but Harstem won, so it was like kind of unnecessary, but I'm going to bring it up where like Harstem seemed like a little bit slow for what I usually see Harstem as. Usually he's like a fast Protoss player. He does do more harassment or just a more fun type of style. Like he was defensive. He was like, I'll get there when I get there. And that was a little odd, but if he's taking the whole path of like, you know what, I just got a little bit bopped by Thermal, I'm going to just try and take it easy here and just do what I know works. And if that's his attitude and it, you know, it obviously worked, he won, then great, that's fantastic. But I do think that if, for instance, if it was Cyril in that decider match, that he would have to really ramp it up and really be much faster, more active on the map. And he might mix it up here now that he has that confidence back. And I kind of hope that he does. But as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if both of them played it safe. Both of them went to that late game. Denver, you probably saw a couple opportunities, as you were saying, where like, hey, if I had just not pulled back to deal with those zealots, I could have killed him. That's all I got to take care of. So I know I could win that game, give it another chance. Yeah.
Well, woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? Like that was the previous game. I do agree with your perhaps psychological kind of analysis almost of you just lost 2 games. It was pretty rough. It's a little bit tough to be aggressive after that, right? And I've been watching Harstem stream as well, and in the PvZ matchup, he does tend to like to get to the late game. In fact, you see a lot of Tempest play from him. Of course, Carry's very good in this matchup as well. But that's typically where he likes to take it, which is a tough road as well. But we can see, too, his patience paid off. Like the game plan was just to get to that 5th base, get a ball rolling, and then get the job done.
That's a lot of Lings. That is the Lings going off to the right side. Initially it looked like they were chasing the probe, but then he's making 6 more. I mean, the Adept's going to scout the 3rd. Well, actually, it's going to go for the natural, where the Lings are being... well, only 2 of them are hidden. I guess... Oh, okay, so that keeps up appearances. Actually, that's perfect. So this is really nice.
Harstem has that final building, though. But it's just the 1 Adept. There's nothing else being built here.
Oh, well, the Adept shaded back to see a lot of Lings. A little bit of an alert, but he's not doing very much with it. So, okay, now building a 2nd pylon, maybe something else behind that Adept when necessary. Yeah, this is his Lings. That's what he's going to do. And Denver is committing a lot of LARB to do this.
It's going to be a tough hold, though. He gets a full surround on that unbuilt building now. He can actually go after the gateway if he really wants to, and more, of course. An Oracle is about to show up, though, and the Oracle's going to slam the door on this for now. You almost have to wow, he's actually going to stick it out.
Yeah, he is. That was a little, maybe eventually you get that gateway, but that was not the time that you do so. No fear about the Overlord drop, but there's a Phoenix taking out an Overlord. That's a 2nd wall Harstem has set up. He's not going to be able to get this 3rd Adept, but things are looking good for our Protoss.
Pretty good. He needs... Yeah, okay, there we go.
I mean, another Oracle's going to pop out, too, to help out, just damage-wise. So, I mean, it's taken him now, what is like a 4th wall, I believe, but he's doing it. So that's all that matters. And finally, the Lings break through. That's where the 2nd Oracle just kills them all.
And he does. He reseals the wall, and that would be the mistake is, you know, assuming the Zerg's going to stop here, but we can see in production that it's just Lings for days. And he's going to keep committing to this. Now, one of the kind of, that first gateway does finish here again, so he's going to have some production. The shield battery's nice, but of course kind of irrelevant right now. Both Oracles are out of energy, but a 3rd Oracle about to pop out, and they will get their energy back, by the way. It's kind of shocking how much energy they can have. I'm sure a Terran Zerg will tell you all about it.
Yeah. I guess the Lings did get some damage done, but...
But even with the 5 probes killed, he's down 20 workers, right? He has to, and he's droning behind this, so... I mean, you don't just leave the game. He's got nowhere to go. That would be the end of his WCS run for Montreal.
Yeah, I mean, you take a chance, and while it looks lame because you know what's happening, it's defended. It was very close to working. I think if the Adept doesn't shade back, maybe it sticks around towards the third more often, then the mental preparation isn't there, the extra wall, the probe is in position to start walling off, because it was close. There were some times where maybe there wasn't enough minerals to build that gateway, but then just barely there was, and that could have been an easy way to get your head back in the game. You're literally a point on the board, and instead it backfires, and Harstem has a very good position to play this game out from.
Yep. And it's a little bit low-hanging fruit too, right? Because the wall-in has been a gape and open for a lot of the early game, and you'd notice this too in the first game. That was the truth for Harstem as well, but he's just so well timed out, and he's such a solid player that it's not like by accident that he adds the final building to the wall-in and then re-walls behind that. That's part of the build. Like he gets Ling flooded on the ladder all day long, so I'm a little bit sad that Denver went for this, because I think it would require Harstem playing really beneath himself for it to work on that level. And now we're seeing what happens. So the drone line at the third base gets almost completely cleaned up. 10 drones die. 34 drones to 50 probes. These are numbers you don't like to hear if you're a Zerg fan.
No. But, you know, Denver, I was saying that if he played the same game as last, there was a couple of opportunities where he certainly looked to be stronger and in control. Maybe he just thought that Harstem would also expect him to play the same, as it was very stressful game for Harstem. He did almost lose a couple times.
Sure.
But no, he went for the Ling Flood. Didn't work out. And now what do you do to try and come back? I mean, what are your comeback mechanics in this matchup? I suppose a surprise Spire, but with 2 Oracles still alive with Revelation, that seems unlikely. Follow-up all in. By that time, Harstem would be prepared for most, if not anything. And there is a lair on the way, so I guess just up to Hydras and maybe Banelings, try and get a lucky strike with the Banelings. That
would be the hope. I like your call for the Spire, and that too is a good idea. The problem is, Harstem's doing the thing that Protoss should do in this position. A War Prism's going to make its way across the map here. It's got, what, 9 gateways behind this? And he should just drop a couple of Archons, warp in a bunch of Zealots, and say, you're behind, so even if you are able to defend this kind of an attack, the amount of money and resources you have to commit to defending this attack puts you even further behind. And it just makes it very, very hard for Zerg to come back. Because like you said, Banelings would be like one of the ways to get back into this, right? But there's a Hydra Den, there's no Baneling Nest, and you're at least trading out Zerglings and Queens and stuff and mining time to defend this, and he can't afford it.
Didn't even see this attack incoming. No fluid off to the right side, so everything gets warped in. Archons allowed to leave, and no attack on the Warp Prism. So just the Lings to defend here. That's not going to work out. Tons of Gs coming down as Denver does get 2-0'd out of the group. That's it for him.
And that's tough. And you know, again, on the scoreline, he went 0-4, but 3 of those 4 games were really fantastic. He had a good series against Serral. He played well in game 1 against Harstem. But this one's going to sting. He tried a tactic that just did not work at all in the second game. And in the first game, he probably let a win slip through, which I'll tell you as a Starcraft player, and you know as well, that's the worst feeling I find. If you get bopped, you can kind of be like, all right, and especially if it's like Serral or even Harstem, who's one of the best in Europe, you can be like, okay, yeah, that happens. But when you have the win and you just can't close the door yourself, it's like, shoot, that one's you're going to think about for a while.
Yeah, and Denver was so, he was like bright-eyed this morning. He like made a tweet. He was like really excited. And I feel like he is this really good up-and-coming Zerg, but there are so many in Europe, so you really got to prove yourself. And this was a bit of the group of death, so it's like you showed 3 out of 4 games that were really, really good. You showed that you can mix things up with the 4th game, even though it didn't work.
Yeah.
And we're going to see you next year for sure.
Well, that's it for Denver, and that's going to see Harstem playing on here as we're going to head towards Serral versus Euthermal in that winner match. The loser of this will go on to fight Harstem. The winner will advance to the playoffs at the end of August. But guys, we're going to go to a quick commercial break. Please don't go anywhere because we've got a good match coming up here in just a few minutes.